Hello and welcome to the Red Mountain Community Church podcast, where you can hear conversations with the people of Red Mountain Community Church as we pursue Jesus together. Each episode highlights what God is doing or has been doing in someone's life, or a specific theme in light of what God has revealed in the Bible. I'm Peter Franson, your fellow seat warmer at Red Mountain Community Church. My co-host today is Becky Bibelheimer, our pastor of children's ministry. How are you bracing these days? Has the big move started? Are all the kids in the gym building now?
They are. Last Sunday was our first Sunday in the gym in the new classrooms.
Okay, and we're recording this on August. We're still in August, right? August 6th.
Still the longest month of the year.
August 16th. So last Sunday, how did that first Sunday go? I mean, were you just bracing for it and like, oh my gosh, here we go?
No, it was amazing. Thanks
Really?
to Missy's organization and Kevin and Tim and Andre and Steve's hard work.
Oh, that's great.
The organization and help of really the entire staff. It made it all extremely easy.
Oh, that's great. And I appreciate Kyle's kind of just reminder to be gracious and to be patient, with all the kind of changes going on. Is there anything as you kind of look at the upcoming year? Because it's going to be about a year, is that right? That children's ministry will be in the gym building?
Yes, a little longer.
Okay. So
we're breaking ground the 16th of October.
Okay. So then as you look at that time coming up, are there any like particular challenges that you're kind of like, okay, we're going to have to take on this beast?
I think just flexing with the other groups that share the space and just being willing to, but we all are, we get along, we're kind to each other, and
Good.
I'm very sure that it's all going to work well.
Good. All right, so here's that was a very normal question. Now here's a weird question. It's our irresistible question, as provided by...
It's not a joke, is it?
No. Well, I don't know. You tell me. If you could have an unlimited supply of one thing for the rest of your life, what would you pick?
Oh, easily ice.
Ice?
Yes.
You were so fast on that.
Yeah, there's ice. The second one would be salt.
Why?
Cold drinks are very important to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And salt? Tell me about the salt.
People don't season their food well. So
you like to have a little...
So I can't carry around the whole spice cabinet. So I'm just going to take the salt with me, and I actually carry it in my purse.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
Little known fact. There you go.
All right.
Digging deeper.
All right. So like next time we have one of those picnic kind of afternoons on the lawn at the church after second service, if anybody's like, oh, this could use a little more salt,
you just send them my way.
Hunt down Becky. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. These hypotheticals I think I take too seriously, because I was like, what substance? Like, I really take it like, okay, I could have some like an unlimited supply. What does unlimited mean? Like I just like a fountain of it, like it's like I could swim in it like Scrooge McDuck or something. And so I kind of went to like, well, I think money is a cheat. We're not supposed to put our hope in money anyway. But I mean, if I'm honest, money, come on. Unlimited, something unlimited, I choose $1 bills or whatever. But if I can't choose that, and it has to be like a substance, then still my mind was going to like cheat things. Or like, well, how about gas, like gasoline? Could I choose that? Because that translates best into money. Anyway, as a reminder, if you feel like this was just a total dud exchange, you can message us on Instagram or Facebook with suggestions for fun things we could do or talk about before the interview. Although my answer was lame, I really like Becky's. I'm gonna have to keep that in mind next time we're having lunch outside the church. But for now, we are going to move things along. Oh, I should mention, this is the first show that we've done in a long time. First show, I think, of 2023. And nothing's wrong. Everything's fine. Everything's fine if you've been wondering. Lots of stuff going on. Arian, who serves as our producer, became a new mom. And Holly and I had a whirlwind of things going on for a couple of months there. And also at the end of the day, we don't want to just like churn out shows just to churn out shows. I think every episode we're always looking for really meaningful conversations that you guys will hopefully find interesting and valuable and applicable to your life as you pursue Jesus. And so you can know that if you've been wondering where the show has been, that's really the heart of what we're doing here. And we did have a really great conversation just a little while ago. Becky and I spent time talking with Michelle Copeland about her experience of waiting on God to allow her and her husband to have kids. And I know that is a topic that so many of you listening and others can relate to. So I hope that you will find some real valuable things in it. Here is that conversation for you now. Well, Michelle, I'm so glad that you were willing to do this. I know this is kind of a weird thing, to like sit here in front of these microphones, and it's a bit out of a lot of people's comfort zone. And so I appreciate you just kind of stretching yourself a bit.
Thank you.
I've really been looking forward to this because, one of the coolest things about doing this podcast at the church is that there's like a lot of people. We're large enough as a church that even though I've been here since the mid to late 90s, there are people that like I know their name and I exchange sentences with them every few months or something like that. Right. But I don't really know them. And so this is kind of like very selfishly, the podcast is just kind of like Pater's way of like getting to know people that he's either never met or people that he's not gotten to know more deeply. So, and there's some stuff just in the skeleton that I was told in advance, the skeleton of your story, that I was like, whoa, what? Really? I didn't know about this. So I cannot wait to get in. So Michelle, could you start by just giving kind of like a snapshot of your life in terms of like your immediate family, work, if you're working, stage of life, just that kind of stuff?
Sure. So I have been married to my husband, Bill, and we'll celebrate our 38th wedding anniversary on September 1st.
Oh, cool.
So a little while. We do have 2 boys.
Okay.
I do work full-time. I work for Kevin Norton doing church insurance.
Oh, that's right.
And I just absolutely love my job. I feel like I'm part of 1,000 different church ministries. It's just
because
really
they insure
wonderful.
Churches.
We insure all those churches, and I get to work with all of them. So It's just a huge blessing.
How long have you been working there?
Almost 5 years.
Okay.
So just love it. So
cool.
Had no idea about insurance when I started. Kevin's an amazing teacher, very patient.
Oh, nice. And you have 2 boys. How old are your boys?
They are 23 and 20.
Okay. All right. Very relevant to what we're going to be talking about. But before we get to that, can you also just give an idea of like when you first came to faith in Jesus and kind of roughly how that came about?
Sure. So I was raised in pretty much an agnostic home. My parents don't believe.
Okay.
So I didn't believe either. And when I was a teenager, we moved out to Amargosa Valley. You might have heard of that place because that's where Bob and Debbie are from.
Right. That's right. Okay.
Yes. So.
And that's Nevada?
That's Nevada.
Okay.
Out in the middle of absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
Yeah. So when I was a teenager, my best friend decided to be a part of the community melodrama. So there is no way I'm an actress, like no part of me.
Okay.
But she talked me into it because she didn't want to do it alone.
Okay.
And that's where I met Bill.
Like when you say melodrama, do you mean like with the evil guy with the top hat tying the girl to the railroad tracks with the piano going dum bum 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 bum?
Egad, what a cad.
Wow.
That's the name of the play.
Nice.
Yeah. So I still remember that. Yeah. And so I met my husband, Bill.
Okay.
And he had a reputation of being a Jesus freak.
Okay.
So,
wait a minute. I missed a detail. I must have lost it. Was he in the play?
He was also in the play.
Who was Bill playing?
He was actually playing just a random character.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I was the heroine. He wasn't my hero at that point.
Okay. Did you get literally tied to railroad tracks? No. Okay. Okay, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. So that's where you met Bill.
That's where I met Bill.
Okay.
And I told him, I don't want to hear about Jesus. I don't want to hear your Christian music. Don't read the Bible to me. I want none of that. Because I did not believe.
Yeah.
But he was really cute. So I did. So I did want to spend time with him. And so every day he would give me a ride home from practice. And he, of course, is not a rule follower. He would talk about Jesus every day. He would play his Christian music. He would even pull over on the side of the road and read his Bible to me.
Oh, wow.
And so, and then him and Bob and Debbie began praying for me.
Okay.
And so, you got 3 prayer warriors. Didn't take long. And then I also realized the truth about hell. I thought hell was kind of like a party place, and realized it really is not. It's a pretty horrible place, and I did not want to go there.
Yeah.
So it was only a few months, and I became a Christian.
Wow.
So I started listening to Bob give sermons back when I was 15 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even know. That wasn't even the list of things that surprised me that I knew in advance. Like, that's the first time if I knew, I forgot that you guys were part of the background of Bob and Debbie.
Yes.
Man, that's crazy. Yeah. Okay. So that almost negates, well, I can almost predict what you're going to say for one of my future questions, but we'll get to that when we get there. Okay. So one of the things that I did learn beforehand that surprised me was that you and Bill served in the mission field for a while.
Yes.
That was complete news to me. So where did you serve? When roughly was this? What was the day-to-day nature of the work? Just tell me a little about that.
So Bob and Debbie left Amargosa in 1990-ish to start Red Mountain.
Okay.
So we were still out in Nevada, and we felt like our family had left. We had no reason. And then that was when the wall came down.
Oh.
And so we thought, well, let's go to Romania. The Berlin Wall.
Yep. I was like, that's the only one I know about. I hope that's...
Right. Yep. That's it.
Okay.
Yep. So the first country to open up was Romania. And so we thought, well, we can go to Romania. They haven't heard about Jesus. And but by the time we found an agency to go with and began the process of it, the Soviet Union had opened up. And so we thought, well, there's even more millions of people there who haven't heard about Jesus.
Wow.
And so we ended up going to Kazakhstan, the second largest republic in the Soviet Union, down to the capital of Almaty. We landed there in 1992. So we had been married for 6 years at that point. We did not have children.
Okay.
And our day-to-day life was studying Russian, doing Bible studies with the kids, and daily life. Like, this is back when the Soviet Union just fell. Like, you were standing in bread lines for 3 hours. It was a rough life.
Wow.
We had no toilet seat when we got there.
Oh my gosh. Good grief.
Just a hole in the ground?
Yeah, no, it was toilet. There was just no seat on it. So it was
wow.
a piece of cardboard. But when we found it at the market, the local market, we bought 3, just in case anybody else we knew needed one. Because by the next day, that'd all be gone, kind of thing. So there was no regular stores there or anything like that. It was quite an adventure.
Wow.
And we were alone for the first 5 months before we got some teammates.
Okay.
And then we began the process of teaching English as a second language. We hosted music camps. We hosted medical camps.
Wow.
So a lot of interesting stuff.
Oh my gosh.
And helped to plant a church. So.
And how long were you over there for then?
So we just lived there 2 years.
Okay.
And then we had gone to England for 2 years after that. And we still worked in Central Asia, but we lived in England. And that's part of the rest of the story.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, this is blowing my mind here. Okay, so then when did you and Bill start coming to RMCC? I mean, what got you you had that connection with them in Nevada.
Yes.
But then what led you to Arizona and to be part of RMCC? And I suppose probably along with that will be the answer to the question, why stay committed here for so long? You guys have been here as long as I can remember.
Yes, so Red Mountain was one of the first churches that supported us as missionaries.
Okay.
And so when we would come home on furlough, we always visited the church and gave our report of what was going on. And of course, Bob and Debbie had always supported us. In fact, they were the very first supporters that even supported us to be missionaries.
Okay.
So we came back here in 1996 from the mission field.
Okay.
Bill had been offered a job, and well, we felt like Bob and Debbie were really our family, so that's why we came here.
Okay, that sounds vaguely familiar.
And
now,
why we'll always be here.
Yeah. Yeah, I graduated from high school in 96, and I think maybe when I first started kind of hearing the last name Copeland and some stuff like that, it was probably, that sounds about right.
I remember you singing up on stage at a women's ministry event.
Okay, yeah. Yep. Okay, so as I understand, a significant part of your faith journey is related to the struggles that you and Bill had starting a family. So can you tell me a little about the experience of not being able to have children and maybe some of what you guys were praying through, what you were struggling with in that?
Yes, so we had been married for 8 years before we decided to have a family. Because we married young, we didn't feel any need to rush. And then we went on the mission field, so it was kind of very good that we hadn't had children yet.
Yeah.
But after we were there in Kazakhstan for about a year and a half, we decided, it was time to have kids. And so in November of 1993, that's when we decided, let's try.
Okay.
So we started trying, but we had a furlough scheduled to come home in May of 1994.
Okay.
And we hadn't gotten pregnant yet. And so we came home, and I think it was June, we did get pregnant. And so very, of course, excited as you are when you've been trying at that point for 6 months. And saw the heartbeat, and everything was good. And we went back 6 weeks later, I think, but there was no heartbeat. And so, had a miscarriage. And I remember sitting on the beach with Debbie. Bob and Debbie visited with us on the beach in California. And Debbie said, God is in control of even this. He does have a plan. And at the time, I just wanted someone to feel sorry with me, for me.
Yeah.
I didn't want to hear that. But such wise words, and really helped me, because Debbie has experienced some things too that I knew that she knew my pain. And so really needed to hear that, like, trust God. You need to just be trusting God right now.
How long, if you remember, did it take for those words to become valued by you? I mean, initially, was there like just a recoiling and like a,
yes,
there's a hardness there initially? And then was it a matter of days, weeks, months, years?
Probably a week or so.
Okay.
Yeah. Just took a little while to soak in.
Okay.
Yeah. And then so we went back overseas and began trying again. And this time we'd gone to England, partly because of the trouble with pregnancy, but also Bill wanted to mentor under the international director who was living in England at the time. And we were just working in Central Asia, like coordinating work there, but Bill was being mentored.
Okay.
But it took a whole nother year to get pregnant again. So this time it was in July of 1995 that I found out I was pregnant.
Okay.
Had gone to the hospital because of some complications, and they told us it was an ectopic pregnancy.
Okay. You'll have to remind me what that means.
So the pregnancy's in your fallopian tube. It's not viable.
Oh, okay.
And so, that just, it fixed itself. And so that was in July of 1995. And then in June of we still didn't get pregnant again. In June of 1996, we came back to the States. Bill's dad was dying of cancer and felt like we should be here to help take care of his mom and probably get some better medical care. And so that was June of 1996. And so then we met with a fertility specialist, and he put me on some medicine for like 6 months, still nothing. Finally, they did a very, very painful test where they see if your tubes are open. And sure enough, they were closed. And he said, well, it's not a big deal. We can open those tubes. We'll do a little surgery. It'll be fine. Okay, let's do that. And so we did that, and then we tried again for a number of months, nothing. And they said, well, let's try the test again. And sure enough, the tubes were closed again. So he told us our only option at that point would be like in vitro or possibly adoption if we wanted to do that route. But so that was our option at that point. And that had been, I think that was 4 years at that point of trying. And I wasn't really keen on doing in vitro because there's just a lot that goes into that, not just financial, but hormones that you have to take and the cycle. It's just, and I have to say that one of the hardest parts of infertility is the every month hoping and being crushed, hoping and being crushed. And And that was 5 years of that, 4 years of that. So that was probably one of the hardest parts of infertility. Was and you know, I didn't want kids for 8 years, and then I wanted kids. So my prayer was, God, you finally gave me the desire, but you're not giving me the gift.
Yeah.
Why? I didn't understand. I mean, I trusted him that he had a plan, but in the waiting, you're just asking why. So
Yeah. Do you in trusting him and then at the same time asking why? Do you feel like you were, I mean, relatively speaking anyway, in relationship, in growing in relationship with God? Would you say this was something that kind of that kind of halted your growth? Or like, how would you describe your relationship and interactions with the Lord in your prayer life and in scripture reading, all these different faith things that we do to develop our spiritual maturity with the Spirit? How would you describe that whole sector of your life during this time?
That's a good question. I mean, at the time that you're going through it, you feel like you're still growing because you're doing all the disciplines. You're going to Bible study, you're praying, you're in a small group, all of those things. You're faithful to church. And so you would say that you're probably growing.
Yeah.
But I think that question in the back of your mind that you have for God kind of limits that because you're not fully trusting him. And so if you're not fully trusting him, then can you fully grow in him? I think you kind of hold yourself back a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at some point, I don't know if there's more about this period to talk about. If there is, we can. But otherwise, at some point, you guys, as I understand, came really close to adopting, but that ended up not happening. So I don't know if this would be a good point to kind of get into that. If you could tell me some of what happened in that situation, how you guys were feeling about it and praying through it, and just all that.
Sure. So it was 1998 at this point, and we decided, well, we're going to adopt then, because I don't want to do in vitro.
Yeah.
Natural's not an option. Well, let's adopt. Because we'd been to all of the orphanages in Russia, in Kazakhstan, and we saw all the children there, we thought, well, let's just get a baby from Russia. And so we started the process of trying to figure out which organization to go with, how that looked. And at the same time, Melissa Fox, Kyle's sister, had just started Biola University, and she's a softball pitcher. And so she had just started there playing softball, and she came home, I think, for Thanksgiving, something like that.
Okay.
And she told her parents that there's another girl there playing softball with them who is not only pregnant, but very pregnant.
Okay.
And so, of course, Biola had her leave school, but she and her family lived in Nevada, and we were seriously considering adoption. And would we be interested? Wow. Like, wow. This is falling in our lap.
Yeah.
How amazing was that?
Yeah.
And so the mom is 18 years old. The father of the child is 17 years old and still a high school senior in high school.
Okay.
And so we had a phone conversation with them because they wanted an open adoption.
Okay.
And
meaning, for those who are not familiar with that term,
that they want a relationship with whoever adopts their child, their son.
Yeah.
That the child knows them and that it's an open relationship, so it's not a secret.
Yeah. Okay.
And so they were interviewing, I think, 3 other families.
Okay.
And so just had a phone conversation with us in December, and then asked if we could come visit and meet the family. So we said sure. And so it was right over Christmas break, and we drove up to Nevada, and we showed up at their doorstep, I think early morning, like 11-ish. And it was supposed to be like a 1 to 2 hour meeting. Well, it was her family's house. Her parents invited us in. Her brother was there. The whole family's there. We met them, just hit it off immediately. Like, it was just a really neat experience. We played games with them all afternoon. They invited us to stay for dinner. They invited the father's parents over that night so we could meet them as well. So we met everyone. We were probably there like 10 hours. It was a long day and felt really good because obviously a great connection between her family and us. And so we left. They had another family interview the next day, so we knew we wouldn't hear right away. So we came home, and a few days later, we got the phone call that we were the ones they chose.
Wow.
And so, after 5 years, we were just over the moon.
Yeah.
It was just our dream come true.
Wow.
Finally going to get a baby.
Yeah.
So he's due in January.
Okay.
And also one of my dear friends here was pregnant and due in January.
And so we're still at this point in the story in November or
This was December.
This is December. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yep, December right at Christmas.
Okay.
And so she's due in a month or less than a month.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we're getting everything ready to have the baby. And so my friend is due, and she calls me on January 12th because I'm supposed to videotape the birth for her. And so I rush to the hospital. I videotape the birth of her son, my dear friend. I get home, and there's a message on our answering machine, and our baby boy had been born the same day.
Wow.
So, it just felt like God was orchestrating all of these amazing events.
Yeah.
And I was just so overjoyed. So that is on Tuesday.
Okay.
And by law, the mother cannot sign the separation of her parental rights for 72 hours. That's a law.
Okay.
The father can sign at any point, but he had not yet.
Okay.
And so we had bought our plane tickets. We were on our way to pick him up on Friday. And we got a phone call on Thursday that the father had changed his mind, that he was not going to sign the paperwork. But we were dealing with the adoption agency, and they said, this is not uncommon. He's still talking to us. We're pretty sure by over the weekend he'll sign. Plan to come up on Monday.
Okay.
And so, the weekend was unsettling because we thought we definitely had the baby, and now we find out we may not. But in my mind, God had orchestrated every single detail up to that point, even my friend's baby being born on the same day. Like, it has to be his plan that we get this baby. It's just part of the story, this little glitch. It's just part of the story.
Yeah.
Well, Monday came, and no, he was not going to sign. And so the mom ended up keeping the baby, and they weren't together anyway. And so, it was absolutely devastating. It was by far harder than the miscarriages had been because we were just a few hours away from a baby.
Yeah.
So that was a really hard part.
Man. And do you remember kind of in the aftermath of that, what kinds of things you were thinking about or praying about, thinking about God, your relationship with him, or what kinds of things you were praying about? Do you remember kind of the character of any of that?
Well, the one thing that I remember in particular was that because it wasn't our child, our biological child, I felt like God could have orchestrated this because it wasn't the right child for us. Because maybe something in the personality or a family hit, whatever the reason, it was easier to accept the fact that God had closed that door because it wasn't our biological child. Because maybe God knew something that I didn't know about this child, that it just wasn't the right fit for our family.
Yeah.
And so in that, I trusted him. It was more painful than I can even imagine, but I trusted him in his sovereignty in that part because I thought he does know what is a good fit for our family. And so I'm going to trust him in that.
Yeah.
Not that took the pain away.
Yeah.
But
do you remember what you did with some of those, like the thoughts you just described to me? Now, I don't know if this is kind of like maybe your reflections now or thoughts that you were having at the time, but you kind of talked about how, boy, God just seemed to be orchestrating these things. And this birth was on the same day. And like, based on your perspective, you're like, well, surely this is lining up. I know what God wants and what he's going to bring about.
Right.
So what did you do with those thoughts having felt like you were seeing all these signs and indications, and then suddenly your whole idea of your ability to kind of read God and what He's up to just seemingly went out the window. What do you remember what you were kind of doing with those thoughts?
Yeah, I just giving them to Him. I just again just felt like there must be a reason. It's got to be part of the story that you're writing for this whole thing in my life. It's got to be part of the story. Wow. I don't understand it. Yeah. But I trust you with it.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Okay, so the sons you have now, those are biological sons?
They are.
Of you and Bill.
Yep.
So can you share what changed that made that possible? And then also kind of like your perspective and feelings on the timing of that for you guys in light of all that you'd been through.
Gone through. This is the good part of the story.
Okay. I've been riveted the whole time.
So that was January of 1999.
Okay.
So by about March, I told Bill, okay, I'm ready. Let's try another adoption. Let's get out there. I'm ready to go. He said, I'm not. No, I don't want to do that. And I said, well, what are we going to do? Just sit around with no kids? Like, what's the option here? He said, I just do not want you go through that pain again. It was too hard on me. It was hard on him, his own grief. But then as a man, you like to fix it when your wife hurts, right? And he couldn't fix it. And he didn't want to see that again.
Sure.
So he said, I really think we should go to another fertility specialist. And I tell you what, there is nothing that was further from my mind than to do that again. I had zero desire to do that again. That emotional roller coaster that happened every month, I did not want to do that. Like, no desire. But what was the option? He wasn't going to go forward with the adoption. So we just sit here and wait until he changes his mind. So, the Lord kept bringing the verse to mind, wives, submit to your husbands as is fitting in the Lord. And that was the thing that I had to hold on to. I said, Lord, there is nothing in this that I want, but I got to trust you that if I submit to my husband right now, that it will be for your glory and for your benefit, because I don't want to do it at all.
Wow. That's super countercultural, what you just said.
Right.
That is super countercultural.
Yeah, wow. But I feel like the Lord was at work in that. I mean, there's a reason He gave me that scripture, and so we did go to a new specialist in Scottsdale, and when we met with him, he said, "Yep, your tubes are closed. There's no going about that, but." I also do that same surgery, and I do it differently than most doctors, and my success rate is better.
Oh.
So we could give that a try. I said, okay. I mean, what else am I going to do, right?
Yeah. Oh.
So this is May by this point. I have the surgery, and he does the procedure, and he tells us, now don't even think about getting pregnant for at least 3 months. It's not going to happen. You're all swollen inside. Just put it out of your mind. Just put it that way. So that was kind of good. It helped not be on that roller coaster for the 3 months.
Yep.
And then at the same time, Nancy Braun, who was in charge of women's ministry at the time, came to me and asked me if I would be willing to teach a women's Bible study. So, you know that thing about being out of your comfort zone?
Yeah. Yeah.
So teaching is not my gift, but I felt like if the Lord had led her to ask me, I'll follow through with it. And so she suggested doing the study Experiencing God. Have you heard of that?
Yes, I have. It's been a while, but yes, I have.
It's been a while. So I had done that earlier just as in a small group Bible study.
Okay.
But this time they wanted me to actually lead the women's Bible study and do that study. And this was in the beginning of the summer. And so I'm preparing through the summer, and then the study starts in August.
Okay.
And so I'm just going to read really quick the tenets of that study because I think it's important to the story. So there are 7 points that Experiencing God talks about, and it's one: God is always at work around you. God pursues a continuing love relationship with you that is real and personal. God invites you to become involved with him in his work. God speaks by the Holy Spirit through the Bible, prayer, circumstances, and the church to reveal himself, his purposes, and his ways. God's invitation for you to work with him always leads you to a crisis of belief that requires faith and action. You must make major adjustments in your life to join God in what he is doing, and then you come to know God by experience as you obey him and he accomplishes his work through you. So those are the 7 key points, and most people are challenged about point number 5, that God will lead you to a crisis of belief that requires faith and action. But that is not the point that God had for me. So the point that God had for me was point number 2. God pursues a continuing love relationship with you that is real and personal. Everybody knows God loves us, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows.
Yeah.
Okay, but this took it to a whole new level. So I just want to read 2 little paragraphs from the study because it changed my whole life. God's nature is love. God can never function contrary to his own nature. Never in your life will God ever express his will toward you, except that it is not an expression of perfect love. He can't. He can never give you second best. Interesting thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
His nature will not let him. And then the other paragraph that got me was, if you really believe that God is love, you will also accept the fact that his will is always best. His will is always best because he operates out of love. By nature, God is omniscient, all-knowing. He has all knowledge, past, present, and future. Nothing is outside the knowledge of God. Whenever God expresses himself to you, therefore, his directions are always right. Whenever God gives you a directive, it's always right. God's will is always best. You never have to question whether his will is best or right. It is always best and right. And this is true because he loves you and he knows all. And so, I knew that God loved me, that he died on the cross for me. But when it came to having children, I felt like he was giving me his second best. I did not feel like it was his best. I thought if he was giving me his best, I would have kids right now.
Yeah.
So this must be his second best. He must not want me to be happy. I don't know. And that finally hit me, that if God had not given me children, that was the best for me. That was his perfect will for me. I couldn't see it. All I could see was this overwhelming desire to have kids. Overwhelming. Not what was best for me. I have a limited knowledge of what's best for me. I can only see what's here right now. God can see what's best in the future. And so if his will, what he thought was best for me, was that I never have kids, do I trust him with that? Is that his love? It just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, yes, I have to trust that God's will is best. If that means I never have kids, then that means I never have kids. He has another plan for me, but it's his best. It is the best. And I think that's the thing that I would encourage others with, is that if you're not getting what you want, you probably don't have peace in your life because you're waiting, you're wanting, you're asking, instead of just resting, knowing that God's love is perfect and his will is perfect. Trust him in that. If you will trust him with that, you will have peace. And so that was about September when I came across these verses in the study. And I got a call from the doctor in September because they did that painful test again.
Yeah.
And one of my tubes was still open.
Okay.
And so there was hope.
Okay.
So that means that I had 6 chances within the year to get pregnant. And so he wanted us to do something called GIFT, which is a modified in vitro.
Okay.
We said, yeah, we're just going to keep trying ourselves. And so by November, had a positive pregnancy test.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
Graham was born in July of 2000.
Okay.
And then Reed was born in November of 2002.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So God had a plan. And when I finally accepted that his plan was perfect and I didn't need kids to be in his perfect plan, when I finally accepted that, I think then he was like, okay, you finally learned your lesson.
Yeah.
You got to trust me. You got to trust me. And I think, Kyle's sermon from last Sunday, all about trusting God, just perfect point. The end of the day, God just wants us to trust him, even when we cannot see the end. Even when we think we've been promised something and we're not seeing it through, you gotta just trust him.
Yeah.
Because he's perfect.
Wow. Have you, over the years, just interacted with other women and shared this story? Maybe women who are going through the same thing or who are waiting on other things. Have you found that to be part of your experience since then?
A few times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not a lot.
Okay.
But a few times.
You might have already kind of hit on this, but I just want to ask again to bring it to the surface. If you think of maybe some kind of takeaway that, of course, everybody's situation is different, and so we don't just want to come up with one pat answer and response to everybody who's waiting on the Lord for something in their life. But if it seemed fitting after hearing an individual story, can you think of maybe a takeaway that you've come away from the experience with that you might pass along to someone who is in a place of waiting for something for a long time on the Lord, for him to do something?
I think it would just be that the thing of trust is the key. Because when we're waiting, we have our eyes on ourselves often. We have our eyes on others. I know that when I was struggling, everyone I saw was pregnant or had a baby. Everyone. And so, your eyes are on others. Your eyes are on yourself. And it's really important to be able to experience God's peace in the waiting is to keep your eyes on him. And you can only do that through his word. He's the one who's faithful and true. And when we're not in the word, having that truth reinforced every day, we tend to look at ourselves and look at others. So I would just say it comes down to trust. It comes down to trust and looking to the Lord only for that answer. And only he can give that peace. And he won't give that peace until you're able to fully trust him. Yeah, because other than that, we're wanting. It's nagging us.
Yeah.
You have that pit in your stomach. Why aren't I not getting what I want?
Yeah.
And so if we can get to that point where we're saying, okay, I trust you, then I think then he's willing to, and not that he doesn't answer, but gives us that final direction. He always answers. It just may not be the answer we're waiting for. Yeah. So, but I think by that point, you're willing to accept what the answer is that he has for you because you're trusting him. So
yeah,
it seems to come down to trust. So.
Well, thank you for that. Becky, is there anything that we didn't touch on that's on your mind?
Nothing that you didn't touch on. I'm just struck by the way that the Lord meets us in our pursuit of him. And so even as you stepped into that position of teaching that Bible study and we're willing to be obedient to that, and then the actual text of the book he used to speak to you in such a profound way, those 2 paragraphs, I think, that's such an incredible testimony of how when we continue, and you talked about the struggle of that and very honestly, and I appreciate that, but he stepped in and met you in that place, and I think that's an incredible testimony of his grace to us.
Amen.
Well, Michelle, thank you so much
Oh,
for
you're welcome.
coming out of your comfort zone and revisiting this. I appreciate just kind of like the wisdom, the perspective that you've gained, and your ability to articulate all that. So thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
I really enjoyed hearing Michelle's story, and as I was saying, before we were recording, I wish sometimes that I could have like an Arian kind of serves as our producer for the podcast, who could just line up conversations for me. Because Michelle is someone that I have exchanged a few sentences with every few months here and there for a couple decades now, but not gotten into the deep stuff. And I'm the type of weirdo that'd be like, okay, yeah, sure, we can talk about the weather. We can talk about quote unquote how your week was or whatever. But like, I don't know. I don't think about the weather. I don't know how to answer those questions. How about we just get into the deep stuff of life? And so it was really cool for someone whose name I've known, whose face I've known for so many years, to just kind of get into some deeper stuff about her experience and her faith, especially through something like that. Is there something that in particular that stood out to you, Becky, about that conversation?
Yeah, I think the issue of trusting God. In our walk with Christ, we get to that place. She talked about the crisis of faith point as point number 5 from the book, Experiencing God. And I do think that repeatedly through our lives, Yahweh brings us to places and he asks us that question: Are we gonna trust? Are you gonna trust me? And so that was predominant in her talk, that she had made that decision to trust Jesus throughout her life.
Yeah. And I think key to that trust, as she brought it out, was something that stood out to me in what she said, was that just kind of the realization dawning on her in a fresh way that God has an individualized love for her, and for each of us. And I think that there's a lot we read in Scripture that talks about God loving the world and loving people. It's usually a plural noun, just when God is just when God the object of God's love is described, other than like individual stories and stuff. And I think in recent years, what's been valuable to me and helped affirm in my mind his individualized love, which is so key to trust, I think, is verses that talk about us as children, because, I only have 2 kids, but plenty of people have many more kids than I do. And they would each say that just having more kids doesn't mean that you love any of them individually less. You still have this very specific, individualized love for each of them. And so that just reminded me of how valuable that process has been, to look for those child verses, those child comparisons in Scripture. When God talks about us being his children, then like, okay, so that means, part of that idea is that he has an individualized love for me. And her connecting that to trust is just like, yes, of course. That makes such perfect sense. So I appreciated her just sharing that kind of realization, really connected with me. Okay, well, I think that's it for this episode of the Red Mountain Community Church podcast. You can follow Red Mountain Community Church on Instagram and Facebook, where you can also leave us comments and suggestions to help make the show better. Also, be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening so you don't miss out on the next episode. And if by chance you want more of me blabbing on topics relevant to Christian geeks, you can check out my personal weekly show, the Christian Geek Central podcast. In the meantime, I'm Peter Franson.
And I'm Becky Bibelheimer.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on Sunday.